You're a senile, crazy old witch. Get out of my sight. That's what my daughter-in-law said, right before I rewrote my will and caught her kissing the man she swore didn't exist. Hey, I'm so glad you're here to listen. Stay here with me through this whole story and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my stories travel. My son just sat there, silent. And me? I spent the night in a hotel. Then, I got to work. This is the story of how I got my quiet revenge. With a camera, a clause, and not one raised voice. I had changed the guest room sheets the day before, even though I knew they wouldn't notice. They never did, but still, lavender sachets in the pillowcases, corners tucked sharp, windows cracked just enough to let the afternoon breeze take the edge off. I baked an apple crumble the morning they arrived, not because anyone asked, but because it made the kitchen smell like something you'd want to come home to. The good dish towels were out. The small ceramic jug I use for lilacs had actual lilacs in it. It had been Emma's idea to come. That's what surprised me. My son Ben had called on a Sunday, casual, like it was nothing. Hey, just a heads up, Emma thought it might be nice if we came up for a few days. I remember blinking at the phone. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and the last time we spoke it was more frost than words. But I smiled, said, of course, would love to have you both. Hung up and stared at the wall for a good while after. When their car pulled in, I wiped my hands twice before opening the door. Emma stepped out first, all sleek lines and dry cleaner pleats, her smile painted on just right. She leaned in and hugged me with her arms only, said I looked well. Then Ben, my boy, bigger now somehow than I ever imagined he'd become. He hugged me tighter, asked what was cooking. I told him, and he grinned, said, still the best smell in the world. I tucked that away like a keepsake. The visit started smooth. Too smooth. Emma was polite, offered to help with dishes, asked about my book club. Ben scrolled through photos on his phone, mostly of work, one or two of their new patio set. They both complimented the guest room, the lilacs, the pie. I poured the wine. We played a round of Scrabble after dinner, the kind of game that floats between real conversation and just enough distraction. Emma beat us both. I tried not to read too much into her kindness. Maybe things had softened. Maybe distance had thinned whatever had been sitting between us for the last few years. She asked about my knee, remembered the surgery date. She said I looked strong. I smiled, said thank you, tried not to glance at Ben too long while she spoke. I missed the way he used to look at me when he was little, like I held the sun. These days, it was more like I held something he was trying to put down gently. The next morning, they went out to a trail nearby. I stayed back, not wanting to slow them down. I made lemon tea, folded laundry, refilled the birdseed. I found myself humming. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. For once, the quiet didn't feel quite so empty. I even thought, maybe this week might be different. Maybe we'd find a way back to something smaller, but real. I had stopped expecting miracles. But something honest? That didn't feel too much to ask. The night before, I had laid out towels on the edge of the bed, extra toothpaste in the drawer, even Emma's favorite soap, the rosemary one she used when she stayed over once years ago. She hadn't said anything about it, but I noticed it was open by the sink. That was enough. Little things like that were how I measured connection these days. We had 3 dinners together that week, and each one I tried a little harder than the last. Not in a desperate way. Just precise. Flaky pastry, braised lamb, a salad with oranges, the kind she once mentioned liking in a magazine recipe. I watched her plate, watched how Ben watched her. I listened when they spoke about the city, nodded when they shared stories I wasn't part of. I told myself that's what visiting meant. Being a listener, making room. Still, sometimes I'd catch Emma looking at her phone under the table. Or Ben glancing toward her before answering me, as if checking the weather. But I let those things slide. I reminded myself to stay in the good. Because they were here. Because the house felt fuller than usual. Because I'd rather cling to a sliver of warmth than test the shape of the cold. And really, it was going well. Or so I thought. But even sweetness can rot from the inside out if you leave it sitting long enough. And I would learn soon enough, something had been rotting all along. I came home early from bridge that Thursday. We'd finished the last hand fast, and I was tired of pretending to care who trumped what. The sun was low enough to cast long shadows across the driveway as I pulled in, and that's when I saw it. A car I didn't recognize pulling out from in front of the house. Sleek, dark, new. The kind of car Ben would have admired as a teenager. A young man was behind the wheel. Sunglasses, clean jawline, confident grip. He didn't wave, just backed out slow and turned down the road like he'd been here before. I stayed parked for a moment. Not because I was afraid, just unsettled. There are some moments that settle into your bones without asking permission. That was one of them. Inside, the house was quiet. No shoes by the door. No murmur of the TV. I called out. Once, twice. No answer. Then I noticed the back door was open, the sliding one that sticks a little. I stepped through to the deck and found Emma on the patio chaise, one leg folded over the other, reading something on her phone. She didn't look up right away. I cleared my throat. She glanced over her sunglasses. "Oh, hey, you're back early." Was someone just here? Her head tilted slightly. Sorry? A man. In a black car. He was just leaving as I pulled in. Emma furrowed her brow like she was trying to understand English for the first time. Not a clue what you're talking about. Maybe a delivery? Or someone turning around? He looked like he knew where he was going. She gave a small shrug and went back to her phone. Well, I've been here the whole time. Haven't seen a soul. I stood there for a second too long. The breeze lifted a corner of the outdoor rug. I noticed her drink on the side table. Iced tea, half full, sweating in the sun. The same glassware I keep in the back cabinet, the ones I don't normally use. Maybe I imagined it, I said quietly. She smiled without teeth. Don't worry, we all do that sometimes. Back inside, I washed my hands even though they weren't dirty. The kitchen faucet squeaked, the way it always does when it hasn't been used in a few hours. I looked at the clock. They hadn't been gone long, maybe 20 minutes. Not enough time for a full visit, but plenty for something else. I busied myself with dinner prep. Onions, garlic, butter softening in the pan. Ben came in a few minutes later, kissed the top of my head like always. Asked how bridge went. Fine, quick. I came home early, I said, not turning from the stove. He reached into the fridge for a soda. I saw someone pulling out of the driveway when I got here. Young man, black car. His tone shifted just slightly. Oh? I thought maybe you knew who it was. A pause. Then laughter, tight and flat. Mom, it's probably someone lost. You're always noticing things. Could have been a neighbor. He wasn't from around here? Ben leaned against the counter. Or maybe you're just tired. You've said yourself how your eyes have been giving you trouble. I blinked. My eyes are fine. He smiled gently, the way people do when they think they're right. I'm just saying, maybe don't worry about it. There's a kind of dismissal that feels like kindness if you don't look too hard. I didn't press him. I stirred the pot. I said nothing. But something in me had shifted. Just a degree. Just enough. Because when people start treating you like your memory's unreliable, it's never just about what you forgot. It's about what they don't want you to remember. Dinner that night was baked chicken with thyme, roasted potatoes, and a salad I'd tossed with little orange segments and slivered almonds. I always thought presentation mattered, even if no one said so. Ben poured the wine, white for Emma, red for him. I made do with iced tea, my hands steady on the glass even though my chest was still humming with what I'd seen. We ate quietly at first, the scraping of forks, the occasional the clink of a glass set down a bit too hard. Emma complimented the potatoes, said they were crisped just right. Ben nodded and asked if the rosemary was from my garden. I said yes. I didn't mention that the plant had nearly died last winter, that I had nursed it back inside my laundry room with a space heater and prayer. Some things don't need to be shared. About halfway through, I looked up from my plate and said, I was thinking about that car again. Ben paused, fork in midair. Emma looked at me flatly. I continued. The black one, from earlier. It didn't feel like someone lost. Emma let out a breath. Not loud, but sharp. Still on that? I ignored her. Did you hear anything while you were out? Maybe a friend stopping by? Ben gave me a patient smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mom, you're worrying too much. Seriously, there was no car. There was, I said quietly. I saw it. Emma set down her fork with a soft clink. Or maybe you saw what you wanted to see. That one hit differently. It wasn't the words. It was the way she said them. Like I was a child insisting the thunder had a face. Ben reached for his wine. Let's not do this tonight, okay? Do what? I asked. He hesitated. This thing where you get fixated, where everything becomes a problem. My throat tightened. I asked a question, that's all. Emma pushed her plate away slightly, folded her napkin. It's more than that. It always is. Ben looked at her, then at me. Come on. No, she said, her voice sharper now. She wants to stir things up. It's classic. She hates that we're happy. My mouth parted slightly, but I didn't speak. Emma leaned in, eyes narrowed. You've never liked me. Admit it. Every time we're here, it's like I have to earn airspace. And now you're inventing people in the driveway? What next? Cameras in the birdhouse? Ben chuckled nervously. M-dash. She turned on him. Don't M me. She's implying something and we both know it. Ben looked at me, then down at his plate. He didn't say I was wrong. He didn't say anything at all. Emma sat back in her chair, arms crossed. You know what this is? It's jealousy. That's what it is. She hates that you tell me things now. That you come to me first. She misses being the center. I wanted to speak, to explain, to say that I missed nothing but decency. But I stayed quiet. She's always been like this, Emma continued. Ever since we got married. The little digs, the comments. Always so polite, but with a twist. And now this. Accusing me. Of what? Cheating? I never said... She stood suddenly. You didn't have to. It's all over your face. The room felt smaller. The walls, closer. I stared down at my plate, the food now cold. Emma's voice rose. You're a senile, crazy old bitch. You think everyone's out to get you? Newsflash. It's exhausting. Ben rose quickly. Em, please. She grabbed her glass, drained it. Number, I'm done pretending. I stood slowly. This is my home. Ben stepped between us. I know, Mom. I know. But could you, just for a bit, give us space? She needs to calm down. My eyes locked on his. You're asking me to leave my own house. Just for an hour, please. I nodded once. Just once. I walked to the hall, took my purse, my coat, no overnight bag. I stepped into the night and didn't let the screen door slam. The street was quiet. The wind had picked up. I drove to the only hotel still open on a Thursday. At the front desk, the girl smiled too hard. I gave my name. Paid with a card. Got a room with no view. Inside, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the floral comforter. Then I cried. Not because of what she said, but because he didn't stop her. The hotel room smelled faintly of industrial soap and citrus disinfectant, the kind they pump through vents to make a place feel sterile clean. I didn't take off my shoes. I just sat there on the edge of the bed with my coat still on, purse in my lap, eyes tracing the yellow and blue paisley pattern on the carpet like it might spell out a reason for all this. Outside the window was a parking lot lit by buzzing overhead lamps. A pickup truck, a sedan, one empty space with an oil stain darkening the concrete. I didn't pull the curtain. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't need background noise. I already had my own. The words replayed. Not just hers, his. Not just the insults, but the silence. The way Ben's face folded in on itself, like being neutral made him noble. As if detachment was the higher ground. As if asking his mother to leave her own house wasn't a wound, but a favor. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was too stunned for that. There's a silence that happens in the center of shock. It isn't peace, just a space so hollow that even rage can't find a foothold. I lay back eventually, not bothering to pull down the bedspread. Just lay there, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a drifting cloud or a wounded animal. I thought about the lasagna pan still soaking in the sink, the folded napkins on the counter, the linen dish towel with the stitched violets hanging neatly from the oven bar. It wasn't just my house. It was the shape of my care. And I'd been asked to step out of it. I don't know when I fell asleep. But I woke up before dawn, neck stiff, coat still buttoned halfway. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. Just the time, 5:12 a.m., glowing like a dare. I sat up slowly, stretched, and poured a cup of lukewarm coffee from the lobby thermos. A man with a red baseball cap nodded at me from the elevator. I nodded back. We didn't speak. Back in the room, I opened my notebook, the one I keep in my purse for grocery lists and passwords, and wrote down one sentence. Never let someone else's comfort cost you your self-respect. It looked dramatic, written in pen like that, but it felt truer than anything else in the room. I stayed until checkout. I didn't go back early, didn't call ahead. I wanted them to wonder. I wanted Emma to look at her phone and see nothing. I wanted Ben to feel the pause. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the curtains were closed. No one was outside. I unlocked the door, quiet as a guest, and stepped back into my own life like it belonged to someone else. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and vinegar. Someone had cleaned. The dish towel was gone. The lasagna pan was back in the cabinet. The napkins were still folded, untouched. A note sat on the counter. Went into town for lunch. Back later. B. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just the neat scrawl of someone who assumed the world would resume spinning. I stood there a long time before I moved. Then I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the table, and placed both hands flat on the surface. I breathed. I looked around. I listened to the refrigerator hum. And I knew something now. Not about them, but about me. I would never beg for space in a life I built with my own hands. I would never leave my house again for someone else's temper. And the next time someone told me I was imagining things, I'd remember how sharp the real world felt beneath my feet when I stepped outside alone and still found solid ground. I wasn't sure I was going to tell anyone. The night at the hotel, the names she threw like stones, the way Ben had folded his silence around her like a cloak. I thought maybe if I kept it all inside, I could sort it, flatten it, tuck it into a place that didn't sting every time I passed the hallway mirror. But Joyce knew something was off the second I sat down across from her at the Yellow Finch, our usual Friday cafe. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching me over her glasses. I tried to smile. It didn't hold. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "I haven't," I replied, and that was the first thread that came loose. By the time we'd finished our first cup, I had told her most of it. Not everything, not the specific words, not how small I'd felt when he asked me to leave, but enough that her expression changed from polite concern to something sharper. Protective. She didn't interrupt, just nodded in places, offered small hums where it mattered, let the silence do most of the holding. When I mentioned the car, her brow lifted. "What kind of car?" "Black, new, sleek, some kind of foreign badge on the front. I only caught a glimpse." "Stranger," I nodded. "Emma said I imagined it." Joyce snorted. She would. Later that week, we were back at the Yellow Finch. Joyce, me, and Ruth, who always wore too much perfume but made the best walnut brownies this side of town. We were halfway through our second round of scones when Joyce froze mid-sentence. "Don't turn," she said. "But that's him." I blinked. "Who?" "The man in the black car." I turned anyway. He stood near the counter, back to us, chatting with the girl at the register. Same profile, same sunglasses pushed back on his head, same pressed shirt and posture that didn't belong to someone just passing through. Joyce leaned in. "I saw him Monday too. Same car. Parked just outside your street." "You're sure? As sure as I am that you're not crazy?" I watched him pay in cash, take his drink, and head for the door. Before he reached it, he turned slightly, just enough for us to catch the angle of his face. And there it was. That flicker of recognition. Not toward me, but toward something familiar. The kind of look people wear when they're returning somewhere they think won't be noticed. Ruth waited until he was out of earshot. "He's too polished to be local. And he's not looking for real estate, not without a clipboard." Joyce wiped her fingers on a napkin. "I think your daughter-in-law has a visitor she doesn't want noticed." I sat very still. The weight of someone else's certainty landed squarely on my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the look on his face, the way Emma had deflected, the way Ben had smiled too kindly, too quickly. I thought about how easy it is to make a woman feel like she's losing her grip, especially when she's quiet, especially when she doesn't fight. I got out of bed and went downstairs. The hallway was cold. I opened the drawer by the back door, pulled out the folder with the house receipts and warranties. Tucked behind it was the manual for the outdoor camera I'd never installed, the one Ben gave me 2 Christmases ago and had left in its box because he said it was too complicated. I placed it on the table, next to my tea mug, plugged it in, charged the battery, watched the little light blink green. Outside, the porch creaked under my slippers. I mounted the camera above the garage, exactly where it wouldn't be seen. Then I stepped back, crossed my arms, and looked at it like a woman who finally knew which direction to face. Let them call me paranoid. Let them whisper about old age and misremembering. Let them look me in the eye and lie. I was done pretending not to notice. The next morning, I made coffee like always, measured the grounds, ran the tap until it turned cold, poured slowly. I sat at the table with the mug cupped in both hands and stared at the screen of my phone. The app for the camera was open. No alerts, no movement. Just the square view of my driveway, still and gray in the dawn light. Nothing yet. I spent most of the day tending to small things, dusting the top of the bookshelves, reorganizing the spice rack, washing the front windows inside and out. The kind of chores that take longer when you're thinking. Emma and Ben were out most of the day, said they were taking a drive, maybe stopping by the vineyard an hour south. I said nothing, just nodded. When they came home in the late afternoon, I stayed in my room. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to talk. I listened through the floorboards to the sound of cabinet doors opening, footsteps, silverware clinking. Eventually, it all faded. The camera picked up nothing that night. Or the next, but I kept checking. Not obsessively, just often enough to remind myself I was no longer asleep at the wheel. 3 days later, I drove into town and called a lawyer. Her name was Carol Pine. She used to play bridge with my friend Nora and had once helped her settle a messy estate after a brother passed. Carol worked from a converted room above her garage, wood-paneled walls, a kettle always on. She wore loose blouses, silver rings, and her voice had that soft sandpaper edge that said she didn't tolerate nonsense. I didn't tell her the whole story. I didn't need to. I laid out just enough. The hotel, the man in the car, the silence at breakfast, the insult, the exile, and how my son had smiled and looked away. Carol nodded slowly, hands folded. "Do you have a will?" "Yes. Made it with Mark years ago. Leaves everything to Ben." "Unconditional?" I hesitated. "Yes." She nodded again, sharper this time. "Let's fix that." I looked at her. "You think I should cut him out?" "No," she said, rising. "I think you should make sure next time they try something like that, they lose more than your trust." We rewrote the will. Not to punish, but to prevent. Not out of spite, but clarity. The new version didn't remove Ben. It simply made his inheritance conditional on the kind of son he claimed to be, respectful, present, and not manipulative. It said nothing about love, only behavior. That's what I liked most. If he pushed, pressured, or removed me from my home for any reason short of emergency care, everything would transfer instead to a fund for women who didn't have anyone left to defend them. We registered the documents. Carol added a clause so tight it could strangle a lie. 2 independent physicians would need to verify mental incapacity before anything changed hands. Nothing rushed, nothing slipped through, and no changes without me. It was no longer about protecting myself. It was about sending a quiet message. The next person who tried to disappear me would disappear from my will instead. Carol watched me sign the final page. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the satisfaction in her stillness. Then I asked about the house. "It's yours outright," she said. "Title's clean." "Good. I want it legally locked. No power of attorney. No shared access. No gentle suggestions." She smiled, slow. "I like your style." I took the signed folder home and slipped it behind the dishwasher pods under the sink. Not because I was hiding, because I wanted it close, where no one would look, but I could reach for it any time. That night, I roasted a chicken. I set the table like nothing had changed. They came down, made small talk, complimented the seasoning. I smiled, ate slowly, let them think whatever they wanted. Upstairs before bed, I checked the camera feed again. Still nothing. But I had time. Let them laugh in the guest room. Let her check her phone. Let him play peacemaker. I didn't install that camera out of fear. I installed it so the next time someone lied to my face, I'd have proof they weren't even good at it. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the living room. Nothing special, just towels and a few of Ben's shirts he'd left in the dryer, when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't check. The vibration was soft, familiar, the kind that usually meant a calendar reminder or an ad pretending to be urgent. But I glanced anyway. Motion detected in driveway. I tapped the notification. The screen opened to a grainy feed from the camera above the garage. The sun was high and the angle slightly overexposed, but there, clear as anything, was the black car, sleek and slow, easing into the same spot it had pulled out of weeks before. My breath caught. I set the towel down. On screen, the driver's door opened. The same man stepped out. Same sunglasses. Same careful movements. He looked up at the house like he belonged, like he was expected. The timestamp ticked forward. 30 seconds. 40. Then Emma appeared at the side of the screen, coming out from the gate near the backyard. She walked up to him and smiled. Smiled in that way people do when something is already understood. Not surprised. Not polite. Familiar. She touched his arm. He leaned in. They spoke for a moment, too far from the mic for any sound. Then she stepped closer and placed one hand on his chest. He cupped her waist. They kissed. Not long, but not quickly either. The kind of kiss that doesn't come from a first time. Or a mistake. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't even blink. I just watched. The footage ended after 2 minutes. He turned and walked toward the car. She stood there for a while, arms folded across her chest, looking down the street. Then she went back through the gate, just as the footage faded to stillness. I replayed it twice. Took a screenshot of the moment their faces were closest. Saved it to a folder marked simply, Thursday. I sat back in my chair and stared at the phone in my lap. The towels were still warm on the cushion beside me. A soft blue one had started to unroll. I should have felt something bigger. Rage, vindication, heartbreak. But instead I felt something else. Like I'd been carrying a question for too long, and someone had finally spoken the answer out loud. Later that night, I stood at the sink, hands deep in dishwater, and listened to the two of them laughing faintly from the guest room. Something about a show they were watching, some inside joke. The proof was in my phone, the lie nestled in the corner bedroom. I didn't storm in. I didn't tell Ben. I didn't plan a confrontation. I dried my hands, went to my room, and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. I printed the still image. Nothing graphic, just enough to recognize who was who and what was happening. I placed it in a plain envelope and wrote nothing on the outside. Then I waited, not for more footage, not for another betrayal. I waited for the right time to return the truth to the place it had tried to hide. The next morning, I woke before either of them. The house was silent in that hushed, early way it gets when no one's up yet, and even the refrigerator hum sounds polite. I made coffee without turning on the lights, poured one mug, drank it at the table. Then I went to the guest room. They were still asleep, door closed. I didn't knock. I didn't pause. I opened it gently, like I was checking on a child. The room smelled faintly of perfume and linen spray. Emma's particular brand, something floral but with a sharp edge beneath. Their suitcase sat unzipped at the foot of the bed, clothes spilling a little, as if they'd packed in a hurry, or with the assumption that someone else would tidy after them. I walked to the side table and placed the envelope on the pillow, the one with the still photo folded inside. No note, no explanation, just a picture worth more than any accusation. I stood there for a second, not long. Just enough to see the shape of their sleep, how Ben's arm rested across his chest like he was guarding something. I looked at him, not out of nostalgia, but out of a kind of reverence, for the boy I once knew who used to fall asleep clutching his stuffed bear by the ear. Then I turned and left. I didn't wait for shouting. I didn't wait for footsteps. I didn't wait for anything. I simply made breakfast as usual. Eggs, toast, bacon on low heat. I knew they'd smell it. I knew they'd come down, pretending nothing had changed. I knew it the way you know which stair creaks, which drawer sticks. Emma entered first. Her hair was still damp from the shower. Her face was unreadable. She sat down at the table and reached for a napkin. Ben followed. He didn't speak right away. Just poured orange juice into 2 glasses and passed one to her. Then he looked at me. I looked back. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Something behind his eyes flickered. Recognition, or maybe resignation. He cleared his throat. "Breakfast smells good," he said. I smiled. It usually does. Emma didn't eat much, picked at her eggs. Ben chewed slower than usual. I refilled my coffee and said nothing. When the plates were cleared, Emma stood first. "We should get going," she said, more to him than to me. Ben hesitated. "Yeah, got that thing later." I nodded. Safe travels. He gave me a hug, not stiff, not warm. Just contact, the kind people make when they aren't sure what else to give. She offered a faint goodbye. "No hug?" "No thank you." The door closed behind them. I heard the suitcase wheels on the front walk, the trunk latch pop, the engine start. I didn't look out the window. I didn't need to. Instead, I washed the last of the pans and dried them carefully. Set them back in their rightful place. Later, I found the envelope had been moved. Not thrown away, not hidden. Just moved. Placed back on the guest bed, unopened. As if the picture inside was too heavy to carry, but not too heavy to acknowledge. And that, in the end, was enough. It was early October when I saw his car again, parked out front, driver's side facing the house, engine off. No Emma, no suitcase, just Ben. I watched from the front window for a few minutes before I opened the door. He didn't move right away. Just sat there, hands on the wheel, like he was waiting for the courage to climb out of the seat. When he finally stepped onto the walkway, he moved slower than I remembered. Not physically, but in that way people move when they know they're not sure of the welcome. I met him halfway. Not on the porch, not in the doorway. Just enough space between us to keep it honest. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Ben." He looked thinner, a little pale. The kind of worn that doesn't come from illness, but from too many things pressing down at once. "Can we talk?" I gave a small nod and turned. He followed me in without asking. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to help him with spelling words and tape his art projects to the side with refrigerator magnets. The air between us settled like dust. He cleared his throat. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I waited. He looked down at his hands. About how everything went down. Emma. She's gone. Moved out last week. We'd been trying, but... He trailed off. I didn't fill the space. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," he said finally. "I mean, I saw it. I just didn't let myself see it." Still, I stayed quiet. He shifted in his seat. "I found the envelope. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. Just seeing it there, what you were willing to leave unsaid, it told me enough." "I didn't leave it to make you feel guilty," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's why it worked." We sat like that a while longer. He didn't cry. I didn't either. The pain had already done its burning. All that remained was the cooling afterward. "I miss how things used to be," he said softly. "Back when it was just... easier." I nodded. So do I. But ease and kindness aren't always the same thing. He looked away. "You were always good to me. I don't think I saw it until I watched someone else treat you badly." I let that settle. Not because I needed the apology, but because I needed him to hear the weight of his own words. I don't expect anything, he said. I'm not here for money or forgiveness. I wanted to come back, even if only for a moment, and sit with my mother. There it was. The boy I remembered, buried deep, but not gone. You'll always be my son, I said finally. But you'll have to earn your way back into my life. He nodded slowly, not offended, not surprised, just accepting. I'm willing, he said, even if it takes a long time. I poured him a cup of tea. He held it with both hands like it was something breakable. We sat for a little longer, not talking, just breathing in the quiet. When he stood to leave, he asked if he could come by again sometime. Maybe, I said. Not yet, but maybe. At the door, he looked back. Thank you for not shutting the door on me. I met his eyes. Thank you for finally knocking. He left then. No hug, no promise. Just a man walking slowly back to his car, shoulders low, steps careful. I didn't watch him drive away. I just turned off the porch light and stood there in the entryway, hands resting on the frame. Sometimes the return isn't about being welcomed. It's about learning how to approach. And this time, he'd come to the door like a visitor. Not a son entitled to a place, but a man hoping for one. And that was a start. I moved the porch furniture around that weekend, not because it needed rearranging, but because I needed to feel the space again. The morning sun hit the swing differently now that the maple had lost half its leaves. I brought out the quilt from the cedar chest and draped it over the armrest, the one with soft blue diamonds and a patch in the corner from when I'd spilled blackberry jam in 1998. It still held the faint scent of cedar and something like memory. I wasn't lonely. That surprised me. For a while I thought silence meant solitude, and solitude meant loss. But it didn't. Not anymore. Not now that I had chosen it. Mornings had a rhythm again. Coffee, the crossword, a soft walk down the drive to check the mailbox. Sometimes I got letters, mostly catalogs, but I checked anyway. Ritual mattered. I started going to the library again on Thursdays, not just to pick up books, but to see faces. Familiar ones. Joyce, of course. Ruth, when her knees allowed. Even Carol stopped by sometimes, dropping off estate guides for women who didn't know how much power they still held. We didn't talk about children much, not unless someone brought it up. When we did, it wasn't bitter, just honest. Like showing someone an old photograph and saying, "This is who I used to be." The garden out back had finally taken. The soil turned easier this fall than the one before. I planted mums, deep red ones, the color of late October. I liked that they bloomed when everything else gave up. Sometimes the neighbor's cat came by and napped in the sun patch near the kitchen window. I didn't shoo her away. I started leaving out scraps, bits of ham, soft bread, and she stayed longer each time. I found the old recipe box Mark had carved for me years ago, tucked in the high cabinet where I used to keep birthday candles and batteries. Inside were the things I thought I'd forgotten. Cornbread with honey butter, the shortbread cookies with lemon zest, the dill pickle pasta salad Ben used to request every summer. I didn't make them all at once, just one every few weeks. Little ways of remembering without needing to ache. One afternoon, I got a letter. Not a card. A letter. It was from a woman named Teresa. She said she was Emma's cousin, and she'd found my address in an old holiday contact book while helping Emma move some boxes. She said she didn't know all the details, but that she'd heard what happened, and wanted to say something she didn't know how to say in person. You deserved better. I hope you're okay. It was the smallest thing, and the most unexpected. I tucked it behind the clock on the mantel. That evening, I baked a cake. Chocolate. 1 layer. No guests. No candles. Just because. I sliced a piece and brought it to the porch with a cup of tea. The sun was almost gone, horizon dipped in that soft lavender that makes you pause without meaning to. I sat there wrapped in the quilt, cake on my lap, tea in hand, the sound of leaves scuttling across the porch boards. I didn't need anyone to see me to know I existed. I didn't need to prove my place in anyone's life to feel rooted in my own. Sometimes peace doesn't come when the storm ends. It comes when you decide to stop stepping outside every time thunder starts again. And on that porch, in that quiet, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free.